Welcome to Perspectives in Peds, or PIP for short, your go-to podcast for insights into paediatric practice. From clinical approaches and emerging research to the everyday wins and challenges, we bring you OT perspectives that inform, inspire and spark conversation. Hi guys.
Hi Katie.
Welcome back Em. Welcome back Josh.
Thanks, Katie.
We're excited to have you both here. Today we're speaking about supervising students. Yes, and our experiences in supervising OT students, but probably most of what we're going to cover will be relevant to other professions that might be considering if they want students as well.
I would assume so. I mean, I don't know. I've never had a psych student or a
Why not?
speechy student, but I hope it's helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I think so. But we want to acknowledge, I guess, starting off, supervising students is complex in nature, and there is a lot of uncertainty, particularly in like clinicians themselves, perhaps not from a business level, but as a clinician you might have hesitations about taking on students and that kind of thing. So we are going to chat through that. But why do we think it's such a complex kind of thing for clinicians to take on?
I feel like there's so many variable factors between both the OT and the student, you know, thinking about the OT themselves, their level of experience, their different types of experience, their experiences outside of the workplace, but then as well the students, their understanding, their strengths and challenges, even their, exposures at uni or their year level. There's just so many different moving parts that can really impact what the placements look like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then also knowing what like your expectations are as a clinician, and then what is the student going to get out of the student placement? What's the uni's expectations? What kind of competencies do the student have to meet?
Do they require
all of these unknown things? Plus what kind of student am I going to get?
Yes,
What kind of student is the
it is one of the
uni
most
gonna allocate?
unpredictable programs that you can have kind of in place.
Absolutely.
I also remember like taking on a student, like first couple of days, you're like, how's the student going to find me? How am I going to interact with the student? It's like meeting a brand new person. I always get nervous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But my first question is like, why do student placements matter? Because they are obviously really important to the student themselves in terms of their requirements within their course, but why do they matter broadly speaking?
I love taking students for a couple of reasons. The first one, it expands my practice and it allows me to reflect on what I'm actually doing day to day. Like we know as clinicians, we can roll through session to session and like we have our plan in our head, or like we explain things to a family and we're just rolling through session content. But having a student lets me personally like reflect and provide my clinical reasoning in a really thinking about the supervision model around how am I going to educate the student on what I'm doing, how am I going to explain what my clinical reasoning is, and that kind of pathway of how I've got there.
Yeah.
But I also think about when I was a student, what kind of supervision and what supervisors and what placements did I really enjoy, and how's that shaped me as a clinician today? Like there's always conversations in the office around like, I did this placement here and I love the supervisor, or the supervisor was no good. And what that's done to, shape the OT we are today. I think that's also a really cool thing to have in mind.
I often forget that we were students at some stage.
It was us
We've
one
all
day.
been there. We've been on that side. But the further you get into your clinician
It's like a
experience.
distant memory.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I have to agree with Josh. I feel like I had a couple of students last year, and I remember one in particular, it just happened to coincide with a very busy time in my life. And I remember being a couple of weeks into the placement and saying to my supervisor going, I don't know if I can do this again. This is really a lot. And then getting to the end of my placement and going, you know what, I actually learnt so much doing that, more from a soft skills perspective of actually learning to delegate, learning how much to give and how to give it, to actually have, a good plan in place with my students and working on more of that side of things, my own stress management, and actually coming out of that and going, oh, you know what, that actually taught me so much.
Yeah. And on that note of soft skills, Em, for us here in private practice, historically it's been pretty tricky to give students a caseload as such, and has led to us having, question marks against, what do we take final year students and that kind of thing. But there's so much learning to be done and had outside or beyond just holding a caseload for students as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, as a supervising OT, it's a really good opportunity to kind of challenge some thinking around, well, where is that student going to get some opportunity for clinical reasoning? Of course, there is the, the direct client interactions, which is an opportunity for them. Yeah. But thinking about what else can that look like? Do they have a little project on the side? Is there other ways that they can have opportunities there? Because obviously working in the NDIS space, we are limited, and we have to be also really mindful of our client outcomes too, of not just throwing a student in there for the sake of a learning opportunity for them, but what does this mean for the client?
Absolutely.
But yes, coming back to that point of where else can they still have some learning chances there too.
Yeah.
Something I spent a little bit of time in taking on the student program here at Kid Link of how can we find those opportunities and help a student like come to what their clinical reasoning is, and what's an opportunity for the clinician here at Kid Link to provide those things, and like defining what clinical reasoning is, setting the expectations really, really early, and giving like really practical tips and like almost sentence starters to provide to students of like, this is how you can ask a question.
Yeah, good one.
Or this is how you can show your clinical reasoning through developing a plan, or this is how you can do it through a resource.
Yes.
And like making it really, really explicit of this is how you can show clinical reasoning. This is what I'm going to look out for. But then also tying that into the SPEF evaluation. Yeah. Like that's the thing that they're marked on. That's how we grade a placement. And so often we've had the end of a placement come around and go, oh, I haven't really seen that.
Yeah.
Not because we like haven't seen it. It's just changing the way we think about how we observe it throughout the placement.
It's a really good point, because I know often you will come out of a session with your student and your go-to is, have you got any questions?
Yeah.
And if they haven't thought about like, what's the point of asking questions other than just like, I didn't know what you were doing. Like that's an opportunity for them to maybe not ask a question, but say, you know, like, oh, I saw you did this. Was that because you did or thought about it this way, or reflect on something? But yes, having those conversations with students is important, because particularly your more junior students will just go, oh, no questions.
Yeah.
Because it may be perceived as you're not learning something.
I don't want to annoy my supervisor.
Yeah, or I want to look like I know what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. I had a student last year say to me, I said to her, have you got any questions? And she actually said to me, which I was really impressed by, going, I feel really bad asking you any questions. I know how busy you are. I don't want to take up more time. I'll figure it out myself. But that was really good learning for me as a supervisor, that actually I need to make it really clear to the student and say, if I don't have time to answer a question,
I'll let you know.
I'm not going to ask you. Or I will say, hey, great question. Let's come back to it later, or let's park that for supervision because this is a more lengthy conversation. Yeah. But that's actually on me as a supervisor to learn to communicate that as well.
Yeah, really important point.
But that was a really good aha moment for me of going, oh, that's why she didn't ask anything yesterday.
She felt guilty.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you both say or reflect on for what are the biggest challenges of supervising students for clinicians and for businesses?
Yeah. I think as a clinician, what having a student does, it exposes these different elements which you may not have thought of before. And in my own supervision sessions with other OTs here at Kid Link, it's been things around time management, and kind of alluded to it then, of like communication and how am I going to best communicate with this student. Those like, I guess, non-clinical or like straight in your face clinical skills that we use day to day throughout our practice, that is the challenging thing, because it smacks you in the face. It's really, really quickly exposed in terms of how am I going to like help get this student through whilst also managing my own thing.
Yeah, and for us, that's not like, we don't reduce the clients that we're seeing when we have students or anything like that.
Absolutely. It's so much more than that 1 hour of their supervision that is factored into your week. It's the time that it takes in your own supervision or coming up with your own supervisor goals for yourself,
Yeah.
or all the little incidental things that come with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that we find as well to be a challenge, and this will obviously depend on the workplace and the team and the culture and that kind of thing. But at Kid Link, we are quite a tight-knit group of OTs, and we do like to have fun. That's how I probably reset and work through the stress of our jobs and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But finding a balance for students within that.
Yeah.
At times we are quite an informal group.
Yeah.
And I know we've had students question like, how do I insert myself? I want to, make the effort and be part of the team, but also where's the boundary there?
Yeah.
Have you guys had any experiences around that with your students?
Yeah, I have. And I feel like it can be such a uncomfortable conversation, but I really do think making the invisible visible almost from the get-go with that has really been what saved my butt a number of times, of being really upfront and saying to them, look, I know that a lot of us are very close, and finding that balance as a student in a close team is tricky, and I just want to acknowledge that, trying to kind of make it clear from the outset.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to ask Josh particularly around when we're thinking about challenges. So Josh, I actually forgot to mention at the start, but Josh oversees our student program here. But communication with unis, as somebody that's organising the students, but also, I don't know, like in your recent years of supervising students, have you had any direct contact with unis yourself? But do you find that to be a challenge? Do you find it to be easy?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to speak on this one.
Yeah.
I've been pretty fortunate that I haven't had to reach out with too many big concerns.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, and looking at it from if there are challenges with a student or if there's things going on, and something that I've learnt from taking on students then stepping into the role to oversee the program is the earlier that you can get the uni involved and understanding that the uni's role within the student placement, they want to be there helping.
Yeah.
And whether it be a site visit from the uni to come out to the clinic, whether it's like an email, whether it's a Zoom call, to kind of just brainstorm and work through things. But even I've had the chance to work with a uni around them doing a little bit of the skill development in supervision, whether it's like supervising or supervision templates, these kinds of things that the uni can work with the student to develop, and just flagging any potential areas which may come up on the spare for, where we're questioning if it's a pass or fail, just getting the uni involved as quick as possible.
Yeah.
There'll be someone from the uni overseeing the cohort student placement. Just making contact with them and just asking how can I go through this? Is that something that you guys can do at uni? Asking all of those questions.
Yeah. Another challenge that we sort of brainstormed as well and it's just the reality of it, like the costs associated with having students and the very minimal income, I guess, businesses do receive as well. So that's something to flag for if you're a business owner that you're thinking about it. Like, are you in a position, financially to be able to take on students?
Yeah.
There's lots of challenges, but that's not to say it's all challenges. What are some of the benefits of supervising students from both of your experiences?
I know I said it earlier, but just all the skill growth. Like, I really feel like without having some students, I would not have seen a lot of my leadership skills grow, my coaching skills grow, my feedback skills grow. I really think that it gives such a good opportunity to develop all of that, and particularly in a team where you maybe have a more experienced team or you don't have new grads or junior staff as frequently.
Yeah.
It can be a nice way to kind of dip your toes in some of those skills.
Yeah, particularly if you're interested in like progressing in your career too. Yeah, like supervising OTs as well and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Finding out, where your strengths lie there and what you'd like to build on. Absolutely.
I think also encouraging that reflection and like going about your own communication with the student to get the reflection from them. Something that I just love about OT is the constant problem solving, and taking on a student enables that in a totally different form. As you kind of alluded to there, the feedback side of things, and how can I like alter or adapt my communication to provide effective feedback. And then like you're working through things in a successful situation, you get to the end of the student placement and they've given you all of this clinical reasoning, or they've reflected on a session, or they've reflected on their own skills, how they take feedback, etc. Whatever the student's goals are, it's kind of cool to sit back and go, I helped them get there. Like that was my role here. And as I said at the very start, like shaping them to understand their own OT identity is something that like I see a massive benefit out of.
Yeah. I think, Josh, you've just given me another really big thing that I love about students is I feel like often you kind of head down, bum up, just going about your usual day-to-day and maybe don't always like stop and sit back and be like, oh, wow, that was really cool. And I feel like it's a really nice thing that having students kind of forces you to stop and notice when they say, whoa, that was really awesome. I love how you did that. That was really interesting, and kind of gives you a chance to stop and go like, actually,
Take a compliment.
Was really cool. That was a really
I agree.
that was a really good session. I did a good job. But it's kind of that forced positive reflection of the things that they notice too, and that they're impressed by. That if I think about Uni M, she would have been like, wow, that's really cool that you just did that. Yeah.
And I think like for us, like we scream, like we love Peds OT. We want all students to walk out of here being like, I want to work in that profession right there. But it's not to say that we haven't had students come in and be like, oh no, I'm absolutely not interested in Peds. Like I want to work 100%. In this area of OT. So to be able to find that balance of like showing them how cool this role is, but also that on a day-to-day level, it's busy, it's stressful, it's heavy sometimes. Like
yes, it is not just 8 hours of pop the pig and bubbles. Like it is some hard days. Yeah, damn it.
Another one of the like benefits that we've brainstormed around having students is like outside of their learning and your learning is also from a business level. Like we've had some students over the years develop some really cool like resources for us, or do some kind of evaluation around a service that you might be providing, or do a project for you. And I think that that's really important to remember.
And recognizing that students are in this like researchy space.
They're
good
at it.
Assignments, they're good at it. All of their assignments, they're referencing, they've got access to all of these libraries of like really good articles and like high level research, and like tap into that. What can they evaluate? Are there service programs, service delivery models, et cetera, I remember the last student block that we took on here, we got our students to look into like COPM goal rating. And they came back with all of this research. It was fantastic. And then they asked some really fantastic questions of us of like, how are you using COPM? This is what the research says. Does it align with what the research is, et cetera, et cetera. But remembering that the students are knee deep in this research space. So access that.
And unless we're like in the process ourselves of, developing something or looking into something specifically, like we don't have all that time to be looking at updated evidence around every single piece of information that we need. But students just have this wealth of knowledge. Like that's their job at the moment.
So and you can delegate time to it.
Yeah. And they've got fresh eyes and they've got questions, and it can kind of be a good chance to be like, actually, why do we do it that way? Can you go look into that?
Good question.
Yeah.
We have had some experiences over the years, I suppose, where perhaps the students' learning needs or support needs might not be matching up with the supervising OT's capacity. Do you have any thoughts around how we can navigate those times, or any strategies or suggestions for clinicians and businesses?
Yeah, I guess going back to what Josh said earlier is getting in touch with the uni ASAP as soon as any of those learning needs are identified, I think is obviously going to be really, really key in formulating a bit of a plan and making the uni aware of that as well.
Yeah.
I guess having a student who needs that bit more support, it really can be just such a time sucker.
Yeah.
And and it can be hard to always do responsively in the moment when you have already committed to things. But it may actually be looking at some of the extra things that are on your plate and going, actually, like, do I have capacity to do this right now?
Yeah.
Are there things that can wait that I can push back or put my hand up and ask for help with?
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm just not going to be able to do everything all at once.
Yeah. And you'll feel really like below the line as well. Like
Yeah.
that you come to work with that negative, like, this is going to be hard and I don't have the time for this and that kind of thing. So reaching out to who you can is important.
And trying to be as self-aware about that as well, like the emotional impact that it can have. It can feel really... Yeah, I think below the line's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
I also think having the conversation with the student, and whether it be in a halfway SPEF evaluation or in your own supervision sessions that you have each week of like, hey, this is where like I'm having, whether you phrase it as concerns or like are there challenges, but also tying into and understanding what those needs are for the student. Most of the time they've got a learning contract or a learning plan and they set their own goals coming into placement. So whether it's a motivation thing, and you kind of said before, Katie, of like what happens if a student's not interested in PEDS, how can we then adapt the placement so it is interesting and they are motivated to keep learning and like participating and are enjoying their placement.
And what other skills can they learn if it's not like the specific interventions that they're particularly not interested in or something?
So it may be a motivation factor and an interest level. It may be like catching them up and spending a little bit of time or setting a bit of a project to catch up their learning around whether it be different presentations of clients, whether it be OT models, whether it be, I don't know, the list goes on and on. But to be able to understand within your supervision sessions, what is that learning need and where can you best intervene and support and supervise your student to kind of achieve those outcomes.
On that note, I know you mentioned earlier as well that like supervising students has really built up your providing feedback skills as well. And I think that that's important, that if you don't feel comfortable sitting in those spaces of giving feedback in a way that's helpful, go and listen to our episode on that. But like you said, Em, having some self-awareness and genuinely like what kinds of skills is going to make this actually a learning opportunity for both of us, and not just this uncomfortable conversation where you're like, so you're failing halfway. What's up with that? And actually, being honest about that and being vulnerable in those moments is only going to, if anything, show them how to do it and learn that giving feedback is a skill as well.
It's so hard, but it is so important. And if I like reflect honestly, early students that I had like found that incredibly difficult. Still don't find it a comfortable thing now sometimes. But it's such a learned skill to be able to sit down with someone and have that conversation in a really kind way, but also being fair to them so that it's not a rude surprise at their midway SPEF.
Yeah. What practical strategies for clinicians do you have just to, I guess, make student supervision more sustainable?
Do the work early.
Cool.
So set up the expectations really, really quickly with the student that's come on board. Have a really rock solid onboarding process so that can happen really quickly and the student is up to speed with how you go about things within your practice. But also what we said at the start of like setting up what does clinical reasoning look like, all of these things throughout the placement that you can give really tangible examples and then have the student reflect that back to you.
Yeah.
The earlier you can do the work, the more proactive you can be with the student to have those expectations set up. The remainder of the 5-week placement block or the 9-week placement block is going to be so much easier.
Yeah. And setting those, I wonder if it could be helpful for some clinicians when they're almost doing their therapy plan to think of like a question they might ask their student that's going to promote reflection rather than, like we said, any questions, because that's the whole point. We want them to be reflecting and not just sitting there stressed like, oh, I don't know what I'm watching and why I'm watching it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Any strategies from you, Em?
Nah, I think clear is kind with all of those things. And I think back to, I want to say it was my second year placement as a student. And I remember getting said, okay, we've got supervision now. And I had no idea what supervision was. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I just went in there and I had nothing because I didn't know what it was. And I hadn't been told, and I wasn't. I mean, uni might have told me. So sorry, sorry, Monash, if I
probably
didn't pay
did know what
attention
it
in that
was.
lecture. But I, whoops. But I just have to agree with Josh that like making it really clear, like what is it that we're talking about? Why am I saying? Have you got any questions? What do I want you to come prepared for supervision with? What does actually preparing for supervision look like? Making everything super tangible ahead of time. Yeah.
The only other thing I would add is, well, two things actually. One, as a clinician, understand what you want out of the student coming on board.
Great. Have
So
a goal
what
for
are your
yourself.
own goals? If it's a supervising, if it's a feedback, if it's a communication, if it's a clinical thing, have that as a really clear goal for yourself heading into the placement. But also then the unis provide their unit outline and what they are expecting out of the placement as well. So access all of those things. You can get them online through whatever uni you're having the student from, but access their unit outlines so that you know what the uni is expecting back.
Unis also have trainings and webinars and stuff for supervisors to watch. So watch them. So that you know what is a realistic goal for yourself of what to get out of it and how does that look.
Absolutely. And I think as well, having your students' learning plan as soon as you can kind of get your hands on it, give you a bit of an idea of where they're at, what they're kind of thinking, where their head's at, and if they're going to need a bit of adjustment in making that a bit more tailored to the setting or what's actually going to be achievable.
From both a business and a clinician perspective, when might it be like appropriate or necessary to say no to having students?
When you do not have capacity to be a good supervisor.
Good one.
Whatever that looks like, whether it's time, whether it's emotionally, whether it's just workload capacity, whatever it is.
Experience as well. I know we were speaking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a first year who's being asked to do a fourth year student placement, maybe for example, maybe it's appropriate, but maybe that's going to be challenging.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Well said.
No. We also discussed like from a business level, like if your motivation for having students or taking students on is purely just recruitment purposes, you're probably not, your heart's probably not in the right place. For having
Because again, you don't know what kind of student, you don't know if they're going to be interested in that, like the domain of OT that you're in, all of these factors which are going to contribute. And say you get a bad student and your only motivation is recruitment, it's going to cause a whole lot of conflict and you're going to resent having the student, and it's just going to be a really tough time. So I think what we've highlighted throughout the episode today is that, like, what are you gaining as the clinician out of it, whether it be the communication, feedback, the direct clinical skills, the reflection, that being a really like high priority when taking on a student is going to set you up for success.
Yeah. And also, like we said earlier, like we have an ethical responsibility to our clients and we need to protect their outcomes and that kind of thing. So if you think that that's going to be damaging to client outcomes at whatever point in time, again, perhaps taking on students at that point in time is just not the right time.
Yeah. And I also think sometimes there's almost a bit of an in-between with that. You know, there might be there's some of my caseload that I say to my students, this isn't going to be one that you can come to, this isn't appropriate. But you can absolutely come to these ones this afternoon, and sometimes it might just be that parts of that need to be adjusted too.
But I think, like, again, communication with that, because if I think back to my final placement, I was on the child youth mental health service team, and almost every client was, this one's not appropriate for you to come to. And 2 weeks in, I hadn't seen a client.
Yeah, okay.
And there wasn't actually any guidance around like how to use that time or what else to do. So I found that really difficult. Whereas 100%. Yes, if you can say this one's not appropriate, this is the reason, but here's what else I'd really love for you to spend your time doing.
Yeah.
Again, there are so many learning opportunities outside of just the face-to-face component of a placement that we need to be supporting students to find, I suppose.
Yeah. But yes, no, if you're looking at your caseload and you're going to have 2 weeks of your student and nothing's appropriate, yes, that's probably a time to say no students.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. In our little wrap up, I would love to know biggest wins personally for you, whether that be, Josh, from a more like overseeing the program perspective or as a supervisor of a student, what are your biggest wins?
I think from as you say, Katie, from overseeing the program, it's really, really cool to see when one of our own OTs from Kid Link has come out of a student placement. Their communication has been really, really clear. They've had all of these massive wins, like direct face-to-face clinical wins with the student. Come out of the program and reflect back and go, oh, like, yeah, that was really tough in the first couple of weeks, but I did this, this, and this, and it set me up for success in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And like just that learning that we see from our own OTs, taking it into their own supervision, how they communicate with other OTs, their own clinical skills, that's where I get a really big kick out of it, going, our OTs here at Kid Link are so much better off for taking that student.
Yes, and it's actually, again, like a mutually beneficial experience for both the student and the clinician.
Yeah, and then I read the student feedback forms that we give to the student, like how did you find the placement, what were your biggest learnings, etc. And reading through them, and they're really, really positive and going, I loved my supervisor, I learned so much out of the placement, thanks for having me at Kid Link. Again, it's such a win.
What about you, Em?
Well, I think it's being the supervisor who gets nice feedback and learns
Getting
lots.
positive feedback.
Yeah, getting all of that. I think it's, but genuinely, like, going through that kind of cycle of, oh my God, this is really hard. What am I doing? And then getting to the end and going, oh wow, that was really, really cool. I've learned all of these things.
Yeah.
And I think there's always like those tangible wins, like with the students when they actually stop and say to you, you know, that was awesome. Or at the end of the placement, you know, even if it is like a nice card.
Give your example. It was sweet. I'm sure they won't mind.
I hope they're listening. I had my most recent student. She saw a lot of SAD scales. So anyone who peds might know what they are when we're talking about uncomfortable feelings. But she made a little scale from her experiences on placement of like all the different learnings and things she'd learnt and taken away from it. Yeah. And it was just really like, it was very touching. I was like, whoa, this is really thoughtful.
Yeah. It's beyond surface level of a like, thanks, I learnt so much. It's like, this is what I
learned. Yeah. And there were some really sweet examples in there that I wouldn't have kind of thought were pivotal learnings or moments for her. But that clearly were. So that was a really, really nice one.
What do you hope your students don't learn from you?
My ability to take on and work through administrative tasks.
Yeah. Why?
I think like in flipping the question a little bit, it's our own self-awareness as clinicians of where our strengths and challenges lie and communicating that to a student and saying, hey, you know what, me writing notes, it may not be the cleanest note or it might take me a bit of extra time. I'm aware of it. This is what my own goals are, working through it. Take it how you want to take it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. None of us are the perfect clinician, but self-awareness is key here, isn't it?
Yeah. I hope they don't get my time management. I really don't. I agree with Josh. I make a point to try and say to them, like, hey, I'm sorry if all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, we've got to go. Or like trying to work through it.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for them to see vulnerability and see us acknowledge that.
And have your own strategies for those things.
Exactly.
And explain what those strategies are.
Yeah, like the endless to-do lists. Yeah.
I so often explain how I use our admin team, our brilliant admin team. Like I'm constantly annoying them with whether it's booking something in or like asking questions around billing or whatever that is. I'm very aware that that's not my strength.
Yeah.
I communicate that to my student and tell them what my strategy is that I've implemented. I know that I'm pretty good at communicating. I use that strength with the admin team to compensate for my not so good admin skills.
Yeah, but it's good for them to see it.
Exactly.
All right. Takeaway points. What do you hope our listeners are leaving with today if they've been thinking about taking on some students?
Yeah. I think students are such an incredible learning opportunity if you put the effort into making it a really good learning opportunity for yourself. You can't just take one on and expect to have all these aha moments and learn a heap. But with a bit of planning and coming up with your own goals, like you really can take a lot from having them.
Yeah, good on him.
It's a fantastic way to give back to the profession as well. It's about what can you do and what have you learned as an OT and shape the future for an OT student.
Yeah.
Continue to make the profession what it is, develop the profession into something really amazing, which OT is. It's your role as a supervisor and taking on a student to continue to develop that.
Yeah. Well, that's very lovely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that lovely end note, thank you for both joining me today. We hope that listeners have got something out of that, and whether they were in a little bit of a, I don't know if I want to take on students, hopefully this has persuaded them because, yeah, if you put the work in, it can be a really cool experience for everyone involved. Beautiful.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.